The Pulse of Providence with Steph Machado on WPRI.com.
Hello and welcome to the Pulse of Providence. I'm Steph Machado, and today our guest is Providence City Councilwoman Nirva LaFortune. Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Steph, for having me here.
Before I get into everything and all the issues going on in Providence, I just want to ask you something that's on everyone's mind. You seem to be gearing up and fundraising for a potential run for mayor of Providence. Where are you at right now? Are you running for mayor next year?
Well, it's still early. I am exploring. I'm speaking to constituents, residents throughout the city, talking to people, listening to their concerns and their needs. And hopefully I'll be able to make a decision sometime this year.
A press release that was sent out by your campaign at the end of the last fundraising quarter noted that you had raised money across the city of Providence. It seemed to be a not so subtle reference perhaps to the fact that another East Side candidate, Mr. Smiley, has raised lots of money, but more focused on the East Side. Do you think are you seeking to build a coalition of voters well beyond your own neighborhood? And do you think that's going to be successful for you?
Well, Steph, as a city council person, and when we make decisions as a collective body, we're making decisions for the whole city of Providence. The policies that we implement impact all residents. And remember, I grew up on the south side of the city. My parents have lived in the Washington Park area for 30 years. And so it's important to me to hear the voices of every constituent in every neighborhood, well, as many constituents as possible in every neighborhood, because at the end of the day, when we're making decisions, the policies that we implement impact Providence residents, not just one particular side, but it impacts all. So it's important that I'm speaking to everyone, understanding their needs, their neighborhood needs. And it also informs the way I approach policy and the decisions that I make as a city council person and a future leader, if I decide to run for the mayor for the city.
You said you anticipate making a decision this year. Is that spring, summer, fall that you think you'll make that decision?
Well, as you said, fundraising is key. So I have to continue speaking with folks and raising funds.
Moving on to the coronavirus pandemic, which is such a big topic in Providence right now. The city is currently giving out vaccines in its own municipal clinics, in addition to, of course, the state-run mass vaccination sites. And earlier this week, the city expanded vaccine eligibility to people 50 and older in the hardest hit neighborhoods of Providence, 02907, 02908, and 02909. You, of course, represent in Ward 3 zip codes that are not part of that hard hit expanded eligibility. Do you agree with that strategy as it stands? Do you wish that your area that you represent was included in that expanded eligibility at this point?
So I see what the city is doing, what the administration is doing as an equity initiative. We know the data have shown us that those are some of the hardest hit areas. So it's an opportunity to expand vaccination to more people, particularly those of vulnerable groups or marginalized identities. I do hope that we continue to take a more equitable approach to identify areas and populations of people who might not have access to vaccinations. I've been talking to people within my communities, my communities in Ward 3, because Ward 3 is quite diverse, and have had conversations around how we can better support and advocate for folks who may not have access, who may have challenges that prevent them from getting to vaccination sites, how we can advocate for them, and also talk to some of our local partners so that we can bring the vaccinations to not only vulnerable areas in other parts of the city, but also within my ward. And we actually are opening up a vaccination site at the AME Church starting tomorrow. And it's in partnership with Lifespan and the community workers. And Reverend Jenkins has done an exceptional job in really advocating for folks in marginalized groups and working hard to not only increase testing. And we just also added a new testing site at the Mount Hope Community Center, but also pushing for more vaccinations, and not just in 02906, but throughout the city of Providence.
I do think we talk about the East Side as this like mass, but in reality, there's a difference between Mount Hope and Blackstone or Wayland. The communities are different in those neighborhoods. Are you hearing from your constituents in Mount Hope, for example, who say, well, in Smith Hill, you can get vaccinated at 50, but I can't get vaccinated unless I'm 65. Is that something you're hearing?
Well, remember, so my ward, Ward 3, is Mount Hope, also Collier Park, the other side of North Main Street. And again, yes, Summit and Blackstone area. What I'm hearing from my constituents, particularly in Mount Hope, is how do we advocate, how do we just get vaccinations to our most vulnerable community members? And everyone's thinking about folks who are older, folks who don't have access to a car, and we're taking a community approach. Just a few weeks ago, members of my community volunteered, and we had a canvas exercise to hang door hangers on people's homes that directed them to the state website so that they can be informed of where to get vaccinations. We hope to continue that work. I've hosted community conversations. I include information in my newsletter, but I also send it to some of the leaders within the community, like Helen Dukes in the Mount Hope Community Center. I reach out to the churches in Mount Hope because I also understand that not everyone has access to the internet. So it's taking multiple approaches to inform folks and to provide them with information about the vaccination clinics. But what I hope to see is for vaccination sites to be accessible in every single neighborhood.
For example, there's a mass vaccination site at the Dunk, which is in Providence, but unless you live near there, you need a car to get there. So, and then there's the John Hope Settlement House, which is the municipal site. But are you hoping there's going to be, sounds like you're hoping there's going to be sites throughout the city, smaller ones?
Absolutely. So my dad is a frontline worker. He's 72 years old and he's a certified nursing assistant. He just received his first vaccination last week. Luckily for him, he has a car. And so when we are looking at vulnerable communities, we do have to approach, and also this whole vaccination rollout, we have to approach it from an equitable framework. And thinking about challenges and or barriers that prevent people from getting to these vaccination sites. And so, yes, transportation is an issue, mobility is an issue. And so expanding vaccination sites, making it more community based, I think is key.
Are you seeing much vaccine hesitancy in your ward?
So, well, again, my ward is very diverse. So there are some groups who are very open to getting vaccinated, but we also have to think about the history of communities of color and the healthcare system. And there is apprehension across the board, particularly in Brown and Black communities. And that's why we are trying to inform people, get information, debunk myths about the vaccination. I actually did a video with a local doctor who's also an immigrant to encourage people within the Black, immigrant, and Brown community to get vaccinated. Again, we're having community conversations. There are leaders within my community and throughout the city who are also engaged in groups to push out more information, to provide opportunities for people to learn about the vaccinations and to have their questions answered. But more importantly, to encourage as many people who are eligible to get vaccinated, because it's key to it's key for us to get out of this vortex that we have been living in, and to also open up our states, fully open up our state's economy.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention our new governor, Dan McKee, who was sworn in last night. We're taping this on a Wednesday. Are you optimistic about his ability to lead us through the rest of the pandemic?
Well, I'm always optimistic. And I do hope that he continues the work that has already started. and also focus again on getting more people vaccinated, and making sure that a diverse group of people are at the table, so that he understands the needs, he understands the barriers, and so that the approaches that are taken is not only to get people vaccinated, but also get the necessary information out there and address the challenges that impede people from getting to the vaccination sites.
He has so far made it pretty clear that he really wants to prioritize teachers
Mhm.
to get vaccinated. The Department of Health had been moving away from an occupation-based model and more to the age, underlying conditions, and geography. What do
Mhm.
you think about sort of adding teachers into the mix potentially for prioritization?
Hmm. Well, my daughter goes to school full time, and she's learning in the classroom. I read, I believe, last night that the governor, I mean, not the governor, pardon, the president, said that he would expand vaccination to all teachers throughout the country. Um, the focus should be on getting as many people vaccinated as possible. I do think it's important to prioritize vulnerable communities or hard hit communities, because we've seen the devastation of these communities. And those are areas where people don't necessarily have the ability to quarantine from other family members, or take time off of work. So it's important that we are prioritizing those groups, but also thinking about how to continue to expand the vaccination, and expand it to those who are exposed often, and just again to approach it from an equity framework. I think that's key.
Moving on to some items
Mhm.
for the city council right now.
Mhm.
Um, the council is currently considering a new contract for Providence police officers.
Mhm.
It's in the finance committee right now. I know you're not on that committee, but you will of course have to take this up when it comes to the full council. There was a public hearing last night where a lot of folks were upset and in opposition to the raises that are proposed for police officers, both this year and next year, but also back pay to get raises for several prior years. It's going to cost millions of dollars in the immediate. The city also got some pension concessions from the union, which they're hoping is going to save money in the long term. But when we're talking about the immediate, when we're talking about the budget that is going to pass in the coming weeks potentially, do you support these raises for the police officers?
So I can see the administrations, and I think I've shared some of my thoughts on social media, and also in our council meetings. I can see the administration's approach in trying to get additional funds in the pension liability. Um, but what the community is asking for, and just to go back, the community's advocacy and concern is really the priority is pushing change in the way in the way or the structure of policing, and to create a more community-based culture or structure. And so the focus should be one, thinking about how to reform the police, and also the raises. It's temporary, but I do hear their concerns. I also understand the importance of contributing more funds into the pension liability. But what is also important, and we can't forget, is that we also need to focus on how do we reform the police, how can we increase engagement between the police and the community, so that we can have a better policing or community policing structure.
Do you think you're a yes or no on this contract if you were to vote today?
Well, we're still in discussion about the contract. Um, Unfortunately, last night, I haven't watched the video yet. I had another commitment, so I was unable to attend the hearing, but I do plan on hearing folks' testimonies. But people throughout the community has reached out. They've shared their concern. And I hope to make a decision. But again, it's finding ways to get to the middle, but more importantly, addressing the pension issue and getting more funds into the pension, and also reforming the police, or the way that we've been policing for quite some time.
The school department is asking the city for some more money in their budget. You may have seen they believe that the city should appropriate $5 million more because of the formula in the Crowley Act. I'm curious what you make of that. Do you think the Providence schools turnaround or the state takeover is going well? Do you think the city should be appropriating more money to the school district?
So I actually reached out to the superintendent and RIDE to ask for a comprehensive budget report, because we have not been given the budget book, which we usually receive every year. So I'm waiting for that, because I want to see, I want the school department to provide us with a comprehensive overview of the school's budgetary needs, how it aligns with the goals and strategic plan, and how we can provide a quality education to our students. If those additional needs will increase the quality of education for our students, I will certainly consider it. But right now, I need to see the budget. We haven't been given a comprehensive report of the school budget, and I'm waiting for that. So I did reach out to them earlier this week, and hopefully we get that in the next few days, so I can do a thorough assessment of the school budgets and be able to talk to my fellow counselors about the needs.
It feels like sort of the first test, I guess, because it's the first budget you're passing since the state takeover happened, where the council is saying, look, we have no authority over the school department anymore, except for this one thing, which is you appropriate the dollars. So you and your colleagues are basically looking for more detail about what they're doing with the money you're giving them now.
Absolutely. It should be a transparent process. Whether the school is under control of the district or RIDE, some of us are parents. I'm a parent. People are taxpayers. It has to be a transparent and open and transparent process, so the community understands where the funds are going, how it's being allocated, how it's being used, how the district is providing or educating our students, and allocating funds for additional resources to support our students and teachers' needs.
Council President Sabina Matos has applied for the lieutenant governor job. If she is selected, of course, that job at the top of the council will be vacant. Is that a position you're interested in?
Well, right now, my focus is to be the best city councilor that I could be. And also, as I stated earlier, talking to people within the community in every single neighborhood as I explore the mayoral race.
Alrighty, and I just wanted to ask you as a final question, Councilwoman, what is the biggest issue facing Providence right now that you plan to tackle in the remaining 2 years of your term?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue right now is COVID-19, the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic on our community. We've seen how it has affected our small businesses. We're seeing restaurants closing down. We're not generating as much revenue. The city's not generating as much revenue as it has in the past. We're seeing its impact on communities, particularly our most marginalized communities. We're seeing its impact on our students and our teachers. So the focus right now for me is to continue to advocate and push for more vaccinations throughout the city, and to take an equitable approach, but also to figure out how we can better serve our community members, so that we can create a plan to rebuilding our city's economy, so that we can move forward.
Councilwoman Nirva LaFortune, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching Pulse of Providence. We'll see you next time.